Baby girl showed out and she said, I'm going to be what my family needs. I'm going to be what this moment needs. People like that can't be held down. People like that can't be deterred because it's not necessarily their actions, it's who they are. When it's intrinsically in you because of some of those variables that we talked about in the beginning of the video, then it doesn't matter what darts are thrown at you. It doesn't matter the difficulties that you face. It's not to say that those difficulties don't hit or that they don't hurt in significant ways. The difference is how you show up to them or how you respond to them. And so that was one of the larger takeaways girl, when you're that girl, in simplest terms, when you're that girl, it don't matter. Keep throwing them, baby. Keep coming at me. I'm gonna survive anyway. I'm gonna thrive anyway. Because it's instinctive. It's an intuitive survival mechanism that you can't strip away from me. Hello, family, and welcome back to the Bastion of Critical Thinking. My name is Raven, therapist, thought leader, and theologian. And like always, I know I say it every week, but I mean it every week too. I am so happy that you're here with me. If you're new here, welcome. Have a seat. Make yourself at home. What we do over here is critically think in the Bastion, and we challenge ourselves to think through ways that we can reform culture. We critique it because critique is not a bad thing, but we also offer ways to reform it too, because we never want to criticize without offering a hand up, right? So with that in mind, have a seat, make yourself comfortable. And if you're not new here, welcome back, family. I'm so glad that you've chosen to join me again today. Today, guys, is going to be a little bit different. I reviewed a movie before, but it's been more in the context of like just offering my thoughts, my emotions behind it. And it was somewhat in the line of what I talk about here. But today I'm just going to be going in, y'all, because I don't know about you, but if you clicked on this video, then obviously you did watch it, or maybe you're thinking about watching it. Did y'all watch the Martha Stewart documentary on Netflix? Child, the movie it was so masterfully done. First of all, the documentary was so masterfully put together. It was kind of long, but it makes sense that it was that long though, because she lived a full life. She's living rather a full life. And anyway, child, I'm doing too much. So today we're going to be talking about that because there was so many gems in that movie that I feel like need to be talked about, especially in the context of what I talk about on my channel, which is, like I said, reforming parts of culture that may need some reformation, right? And that needs some tweaking. And because I'm a thought leader, because I'm a therapist, because I am a theologian, if you will, I want to offer my voice in this space and speak to some of the major themes in this movie that stood out to me, because it was a lot. And I think it was a lot that we don't need to just breeze past, but we need to talk through, because a lot of the major themes in the movie are things that are directly happening within culture and society that I think need to be talked about. So that's why we're talking about it here in the Bastion. And if you're not interested in this kind of stuff, just click away. But if you are, just stick around and hear what I'm going to say, because you'd be surprised. Some of the things that I point out could probably relate to you, or strike some things that maybe that you're passionate about, or even if you're not, it's just fun things to talk about. So stick around and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that stood out the most to me, if you hadn't watched it, it's essentially a documentary about Martha Stewart's life and all of her contributions to our society and to culture in general. And so if you haven't watched it, again, I encourage you to watch it. Now, for those of us that did, or even if you hadn't, right, let's just have a conversation, because like I said, I think there are so many universal themes in this movie that really stood out and that I think are so important to take some time on and like really marinate on. First things first, you know what, one of the biggest themes that I took away from the movie is that you cannot hold a winner down. And I mean that. Let me just pin that on the screen somewhere. You can't hold a winner down. When you're a winner, when you're destined to win, I know everybody doesn't believe in fate and everybody doesn't necessarily believe in, but things just being essentially predestined for people, right? But I do believe personally. So if that's you, slide to the left. But I personally do believe that certain people who have certain inclinations, who have certain personality styles, and who have certain inclinations just in general with regard to who they are and what their capability and capacity is as a person. And I do believe there are people like that who are just predestined for things based off of those specific factors, right? Some of it has to do with biology, right? And your subset of personality and how you show up in the world. And then in turn, that has to do with your your vigor and your resilience and your ability to withstand conflict or navigate difficulty, or even how much charisma you have. I think there are just certain subsets of people, depending on their personality styles and also their experiences, to be fair, that are just predestined for great things, you know? Now, this is not to say that people who don't rise to certain levels of success or stardom or fame, I know culture makes us feel like this, but if this is not to say that people who don't rise to those certain levels of success aren't necessarily great, right? Or that they are any less valuable. Nevertheless, it is to say that heavy is the head that wears the crown. Reason why there are only few people who can make it to that level of success or superstardom is really because it's a hard road to try, and it's not an easy plight. You don't just like wake up today and say, oh, I'm going to do it, and then boom, you're there. There are certain inclinations and, like I said, subsets of personalities, lived experiences, charisma. It's like a concoction. It's like a recipe for success when you're talking about those levels of superstardom, like the Beyoncés, and we can think of a ton of people who've risen to these levels where it's like, no, it takes a little bit more. So anyway, with that in mind, Martha Stewart had that, baby. She was a boss from the beginning, right? And obviously, too, the documentary will be done in such a way, especially because she was a part of it. So the documentary will be done in such a way that will favorably reflect on her life and favorably reflect on her experiences. And I'm not shocked that they painted her life in such a way that made her look like, man, she was just always destined for this. But some things you just can't make up, even if they probably exacerbated or exaggerated some of the facts about her childhood and things like that. The truth is, you can't make up some of it, right? Like, if you came from humble beginnings and then you were the kind and caliber of person that showed out and showed up and helped her family, and she was the eldest daughter, I believe, and she showed out for her family and she became a model and got money in ways that made more money than her parents had, right? She came from difficulty with her father being who he was and the struggles that he had, and she was able to persevere beyond that and still create opportunities for herself and for her family. You can't make that up, even if you're exaggerating or, putting a little salt on the facts. The point is, it's still the reality of her life. So, and I think that's important to point out because baby girl showed out and she said, I'm going to be what my family needs. I'm going to be what this moment needs. People like that can't be held down. People like that can't be deterred because it's not necessarily their actions, it's who they are. With people like this, when it's intrinsically in you because of some of those variables that we talked about in the beginning of the video, then it doesn't matter what darts are thrown at you. It doesn't matter the difficulties that you face. It's not to say that those difficulties don't hit or that they don't hurt in significant ways, but but the difference is how you show up to them or how you respond to them. And so that was one of the larger takeaways that I gathered from the video, was that, girl, when you're that girl, in simplest terms, when you're that girl, it don't matter. Keep throwing them, baby. Keep coming at me. I'm gonna survive anyway. I'm gonna thrive anyway. Because it's instinctive. It's an intuitive survival mechanism that you can't strip away from me. Resilience. It's not even about strength. It's about an internalized resilience that largely doesn't come from yourself, right? It's just a gift of the grace of God. Nevertheless, okay, so the second thing that I gather, it's so difficult being a successful woman. And I know that sounds so cliche, and that sounds like a cultural euphemism at this point because that's such a common talking point. But truly, I was so happy to see how masterfully that the documentary was able to just put that on display, not even necessarily swaying in one political position or cultural position or the other, but rather just stating the facts. And when you state the facts, especially in the context of a successful woman, they always typically lend towards the difficulty of being in a successful position as a woman. And now I want to be clear, success for any person in these sort of contexts is a hard space to be in because, like I said earlier, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Like, it's a burden. It's a powerful burden to have, to be in a position of power, leadership, or it's just heightened success. But it's extremely difficult. And I feel so deeply for people who walk in these positions. And one of the things that I took away from this is that I feel so much less compelled to critique or to talk trash about people in leadership now. Not that they shouldn't be held accountable and that people in leadership shouldn't be held to the fire with regard to how they do things, how they treat people, all of that, which we're going to get to how she treated people in a minute. But what I'm saying is, until you've been in those positions, until you've been in those seats and have to make decisions on behalf of hundreds of thousands of people or thousands of people or just multiple people in general, until you've served in those positions, it's so easy to make critiques from the outside looking in, but it's so much more difficult to be in those positions, be under the heat and the just the staunch fire of everybody's critiques, everybody's expectations, and even your own expectations and insecurities and all of the sort, and still have to make decisions, and then those decisions be effective and fruitful and positively impact people. I couldn't imagine the pressure that that is. And those of you who aren't new here, I used to work in Congress, you know, and so I sat underneath people in high positions of power for years, and I saw the weight of those responsibilities, and I saw the weight of what it is to be thrust in those rooms. And I'm telling you, it just developed within me so much more grace and so much more empathy. Not saying that you don't hold them accountable again, but I just have more empathy. Now, you add on to that what it is to be a woman in these rooms. Child, then it's just heightened to the umpteenth degree, right? Because now not only do people judge you because you're in leadership, but people are just so much internalized messaging about women that we've inherited, all of us, and I do mean all of us, even those of us that are more aware, or what they say, woke, if you will, about some of the nuanced ways that we can be sexist in our country, or even overt ways that we can be sexist in the world in general. Add on to the leadership, the woman piece, then it becomes a whole other conversation of about difficulty and the difficulty of leadership. And it really just opened my eyes even more because of the way that they laid it out, just how hard it is to be in positions like that where people have these preconceived thoughts about how you should act, and how you should not necessarily be as forceful or as straightforward. That's a better word I'll use. They So when you come into leadership with a more straightforward, even brute sort of a disposition, people are turned off by that, right? And it's not, again, want to be clear because I'm not trying to create a double standard here. It's not that people aren't turned off by that with men, but it's because since they expect that from men, they don't necessarily critique it as harshly or judge it as harshly. What they essentially do is just kind of like roll their eyes, right? Proverbially or literally, when a man treats them in a certain way at work, and you just kind of expect a man to kind of be a hard ass in a work context, but you don't expect that from women. And so when they do show up in that sort of a way, then people are ready to tear it down and to condemn it or find a way to destroy it. And baby, that's what happened. Because we're going to get into, matter of fact, let's do that now. When she went public on the stock exchange, as soon as she went public with her company, that's when, at least that's the way that the documentary presented it, right? That's when the vitriol started to happen toward her. And what do y'all get from that, right? What I gathered from it was that you can rise to a level of success. Cool little girl, cool little cute little small woman. You can rise to that level of success. But the second that it starts to break glass ceilings, right? Because she was the first American woman to reach billionaire status. The second that it gets to the point where you're breaking glass ceilings or where you're superseding men in that same arena, now we have to punish you. Now we have to knock you down a few pegs, right? Now we have to use you as an example, and detract from some of your successes, especially because there was rumor that she was notorious for not treating employees well, including men, right? And that's when you become a problem. And I want to be clear. Let's go ahead and go into that now. These character flaws that oftentimes people in power have, or these dictatorial styles of leadership that they often lead with, that, you know, we hear the stories all the time. That's why we hear of the Diddy's, and not to compare her to Diddy at all, but I just mean, like, when people rise to a certain level of power, they become much more arrogant. They become much more callous toward their employees, and they become dictatorial. Let's just be honest, because power breeds narcissism and egomaniacs, if you will. It's not to say that that's an automatic, because you have to have things in place to keep you humble, to hold you accountable, to make sure that you're still in touch with humanity and reality, and the reality that you're a human and that you're capable of flaw. You know, you have to have people to hold you accountable to that idea and to that reality. when you're in leadership. And the truth is, Martha probably hadn't talked to anybody in the working class in maybe 20 years. Like when she went to prison, right? The women that were in the prisons, I'm sure that was her first experience with working class people in a long, long time. Because the reality is, when you are that girl, going back to what we said, when you do rise to prominence from the sweat of your own brow and the work and your own work ethic, it is difficult to stay in touch because you become more and more isolated. You become more and more insular for the sake of protection. One, because vultures come out, but then two, for the sake of just the reality of who you are. You don't have time to be hanging out with chickens when you're soaring like with the eagles, right? Same family of species, different style of bird, right? Completely different room, completely different roles that they take up. And so chickens and eagles can't hang out in the same spaces. The only reason that an eagle would need to be around a chicken is for guidance purposes, right? And for the purposes of remaining humble and recognition that no, I'm not all of that in a bag of chips, like the old saying would go, right? But and so I get how you need to remain in that headspace if you're going to continue to rise to meteoric success the way that she did. But the trade-off though is that it does create this insular mindset within you and make you disconnected from real people. And sometimes it can make you a butthole to real people, to regular people, and to everyday working class people, right? And that's a problem. And so to the degree that she needed to be humbled, I disagree with the way that she was humbled, and I hate that. Like I think two things can be true at the same time. Did she need to be humbled? Absolutely, but not for the sake of the fact that, oh, put that woman in her place, because I'm sure that was what people's mentalities were that went after her. But that wasn't the reason she needed to be humbled. She needed to be humbled so that her success could really permeate and it could reach the levels that it needed to reach outside of the dictatorial style of leadership. She's above that. And when you're really that girl, being that girl looks like being that girl integrally, right? Within your character and your morality, as well as in your external stuff, right? Like how you show up and how you perform and the results that you're able to produce with regard to your business and all of the other ventures that you may be a part of. That's what really being that girl looks like. Not just how successful you are, but how good of a person you are. How you can lead with a firm hand, firm but gentle hand, right? That's real. That's when you're really that girl. It takes practice. It takes trial and error. And guess what? It also takes falling. And that's what had to happen. She fell. Again, the people that made her fall, we're going to get there. Actually, let's go there now. James Comey, I don't know if we remember who that is or what he did. I talked to a couple of people and they were like, wait, no, what was the big deal about James Comey being that guy? I will just leave it here. He was the same guy that put out the report, the Comey report, right before Hillary Clinton's election, the election with Donald Trump. It's starting to seem like a track record for me. A careerist, excited young man who wanted to rise in his career. And so he did it on the backs of tearing down women, powerful, successful women. It's not to say that Hillary Clinton didn't have her qualms. I'm not here to debate politics right now in this conversation. We can do that offline or maybe even in the comments if you want. But right now I'm not coming here to do that. I'm only coming here to point out two obvious facts, which are that this man, a careerist, was so eager to rise in his career and his notoriety and his name recognition to the point that he used successful women to do so. I just find that really problematic and disgusting, right? But why is it important to mention in this video? Because I always like to bring it back to us. The reason that's important is because James Comey tried as he might to tear her down, right? But guess what? Going back to my last point. When you're really that girl, it don't matter what people say or do or the efforts that they lodge against you, because when you're really that girl, you can cut off my legs and I'll still find a way to run a marathon. You can cut off all my limbs actually, and I'll still find a way to win in the limbless Olympics, right? Or whatever. You can come up with any analogy that you want, because when you're really that girl, when you have those characteristics that we talked about earlier in the video, it don't matter what people do or say or how they show up around you. And this may feel cliche and self-evident, but this documentary was such a good reminder of that, especially for me particularly because I'm also in seminary right now, and I'm in a seminary that doesn't believe in female preachers, right? And sometimes that becomes a major burden to bear sometimes. And sometimes it makes me emotional. And there are days where I can literally feel the difference in my gender and how people treat me as a result of that. Or even if not treat me, how they see me and what their expectations are of me. And so, with that in mind, it's been difficult for me trekking through that. And so, although this feels like a self evident reminder that the haters don't matter, the haters will try and keep you down, but you're going to still win if you're destined for that win. That feels self evident, but this was a good reminder. Sometimes the most profound truths are found in the simpler things, truly. And that's what that was for me. I was just at a Hillary Clinton event in New York the other day, and it was packed out to capacity. And same for Martha Stewart. She's literally on a documentary right now on Netflix, and the whole world is talking about her, or relatively anyway. A large swath of the world, the country, is talking about her. If James Comey did an interview right now, he probably couldn't sell out a room, let alone an arena, right? Or let alone a Netflix documentary with. And if he were able to get a Netflix documentary, it'd probably be about the controversy that he brought upon these two infamous women. And so all that to say is, don't let the haters win, because when you're really that girl, when you really got the characteristics to be a winner, child, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Next. Anyway, final thought for real, and I'm done. My final takeaway from this documentary truly was just that sexism is real. Look, duh, Captain Obvious. I know. I'm not brand new to that. But it was sobering, and it felt like a nod, right? That you're not crazy. Tall trees catch a lot of wind. One is the loneliest number, right? Tall trees catch a lot of wind. It's okay. It's you're not going crazy if people are hating on you and you feel isolated on your journey towards success. It's not a bad thing. Now, we do have to make some critiques though, and not even critiques necessarily of Martha, because she did her thing. She was that girl, the original influencer. We can't give her things, very much so. But also, I do want to make some observations that I think is important for us as successful women or successful people that are watching this or that will watch this. Your personal life does matter. Your personal life matters. And it's hard to, one common theme that you'll hear successful people talk about often is just the difficulty of maintaining a personal life while also on the trajectory toward like heightened success, right? It's a hard thing to do. Matter of fact, I know some people would make the case that it's impossible to do both, but I don't buy into that. Michelle Obama, I think, talked about this in her first book, Becoming. I think it was her first book, where she talked about you can have it all, just not at the same time. And I think in part that is true. And so what that looks like is on your road to success, yeah, maybe that does look like you have to sacrifice certain relationships, or you can't necessarily be mom or husband or wife or be the best in any of those roles if you're going to choose hyper success. Yeah, that's true. And so there will come times in life where you have to choose one or the other. So I won't tell you which to choose, because if it wasn't for her choosing success over her family, or choosing to be that stay at home mom and wife and all those things, if it wasn't for her choosing that trajectory, we wouldn't have the influence that she's left on society. So life is about hard choices. So I won't tell you which to choose, because whichever path is right for you, you choose that. I guess a better way to approach this conversation is whatever you do, do it well. And so make the choice. Be intentional about being a quality person in whatever role you serve in. Be intentional about being kind and caring and empathetic and pursuing integrity and morality, right? Have those checkpoints, right? Be intentional about serving God, whichever role that you're serving in. So that way, in whatever you do it with excellence and with other people and with altruism and kindness in mind. I think that's where she fell short a bit, and that's why she had to be humbled in those ways. Again, not advocating for how it was done or why they did it, but I will say you see the beauty in what happened while she was in prison. She was brought to reality, and she was able to reckon with people that she hadn't been able to, or hadn't reckoned with for a long time, or probably ever really. She was able to really put herself in other people's shoes, and then that created a level of success, a level of sustainability, even with regard to her name and culture, and how long she's still how she's been able to stay so relevant. that created a sustainability that wouldn't have been able to sustain had she been going down the path she was on previously, which was just like meteoric success without care about other people or how they felt, right? Or empathy. So be concerned about your character. Whatever role that you're serving in, be intentional about being a good person. I promise you it pays off in the end. And that's the difference between success, like external success, versus holistic success. So those are my thoughts. And if you haven't watched it, go watch the movie. I'm telling you, you need to be inspired in that way. I was so inspired and I was so grateful to be able to have watched that and to get those gems. And my final thoughts, honestly, this was fun to do. I'm happy to have had this conversation with y'all, fam, because this was fun and I like doing this. So tell me if you want more stuff like this, because I have thoughts on different documentaries and shows and stuff that come out, but I like talking about culture. But I do love extracting lessons and things that we can use within culture from movies and things within pop culture. So if you want more of this, we can talk through that. But anyway, all right, guys, I love y'all, and I'm going to be putting out like a couple videos today, so you'll have a couple gems to read, to look through. All right. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe. Please, please, please. It helps so much with growing this family, and it helps out in the algorithm, as you guys probably already know. So like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.